for part 2 that we're doing tonight, and I'll still answer chat and, any questions. I'll show off things. If you want to share things in Discord, because we had that art, and I'll bring it back up too before we go on break again. We have games and chat, questions, people sharing stories. It is amazing in here right now. This part is a bit of DM advice. You as a PC can certainly take it, because PCs and DMs are two sides of the same coin. But I wanted to address ways that you can spice up your campaign or make your campaign world different without breaking the mechanics of the game or having to severely, alter mechanics or things along these lines. As a player, you can do this too and make a proposition to your DM that, hey, my character would like to do this. We take the philosophy of there's nothing new under the sun. That's perfectly fine. It can be difficult at times to find a truly original idea. Though in many instances, it's perfectly okay if you have it's the same thing but different. That sounds a little weird, right? Here's your standard concept. Here's what's changed. Now, as storytellers, we do this because in the hero's journey, the bottom 2/3 partake in this outside world, the underworld, the world that's not known to the original characters, starting in the home village. And so that's, there's something different that happens. One mysterious incident, something that breaks the consistency and the monotony. And that's what we're going to be doing with a couple of these aspects for these races out of the PHB. Real quick though, Jam got the talons, Paka! And all of your things are destroyed. Hi, Clark! Welcome. I invoked Canada a little bit earlier, but it's fine. It's okay if you missed it. We're having a bit of a DM session, a bit of DM collaboration, Clark. Speaking of which, Bobicus in the Discord shared a really cool story that happened to him in his past game. I would suggest reading that. Also, if any of you are here and aren't in the Discord, that's the link to it right there. Please feel free to join us in that venue as well. Like with the channel, that's also a little under construction, but don't worry, it's still a good gathering point to just be a big old nerd. Original ideas are overrated. Great players steal. I would agree, Bobicus. Shadzar, hey Shad, welcome. Wolf is the enemy camp because she is seeing the blood of her enemies. Oh, okay. Wolf is in Dark Wolf. So Dark Wolf is in the enemy camp because she is seeing the blood of her enemies spilt and flowing like a river in the morning light. I spy with my little eye fields of people who've scorned me. Great DMs should be diagnosed with kleptomania. That almost seems like a bumper sticker, Bobicus, or a t-shirt slogan. Oh gosh, you guys are awesome. More like I happen to the story. That's that whole, I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me. I spy a type of headwear. All right. Dark Wolf is unraveling the mystery of her void location, if any of you are wondering. Bobicus, she said she saw gray, and Bobicus is like, is it a gray felt suit or a gray flannel suit? I see headwear. Is it a gray felt cap? Oh. Oh, Dark Wolf says the hint so far, gray, gold, red, and headwear. Okay, well, can you figure out where she's suspended in animation? You're receiving her telepathic pleas. No, she's not there. I have a lot of cool stuff in my basement, but I don't have a Dark Wolf. Oh, you are great. So we have, I chose a couple different races out of the PHB to illustrate a way to liven up the characters as they already exist. And the first example, and a really good one, is Dwarf. The first race in here. The background that the PHB gives, right? Short and stout, long memory, long grudges. This does a very good job at proposing a culture, a a take on life in industry, economy, humor, religion, things like that. There's nothing wrong with going with the PHB ideas. They're solid. They're building. They're a great start for your world. You know that you can just insert them in there, and it will help make the world come alive if you're reading these cultural notes. If you still wanted to make your dwarves fit in, we're not necessarily going to talk about culture, but maybe a little bit more about biology. She sees my helmet. Feel free to ask for more hints. Yeah, animal, vegetable, or mineral. Is it bigger than a bread box? Bobicus has played 20 questions before. So I would encourage you, especially as a new DM and a new player, read these introductions to the cultures and to the races, because it'll help you develop an image and a culture, right? Cultures are what makes the world come alive to sentient beings. Clans and kingdoms, God's golden clan. You know, what is the importance of family? Is there an importance of family? What is some kind of permanence? And they even go and give opinions on some of the other races, broadly speaking. What we are going to be concerned with is, what is a dwarf mechanically? Medium size, 25 feet. Okay, we can conceptualize that, right? Dwarves are 4 to 5 feet tall. They're not they're not in the 5 to 6 or plus range. So they might be a little slower because they're as wide as they are tall, kind of a thing. That makes sense. Can that be adjusted or explained otherwise? I suppose so. Though that seems to make a lot of sense on its own. Dark Wolf says, I can see a mineral material. Is it a cave? Big Mike is back. Can you get a brief rundown? Sure enough. We finished our previous character as a sorcerer. So bada boom. I'd say you can pause your stream here, but it might be a little difficult to do. We finished our character in the first part, and so now we're going into a couple races, and as DMs, we're colluding, and we're saying, how can we make things a little different? Or how can you add a little bit more dressing for your players? And you can look at this as a player and say, how can I play? I want to play a dwarf, but I don't want to be cookie cutter dwarf. I don't want to be the same kind of dwarf that other people have played. And also, Big Mike, in the RP kind of in and out of character of the chat, Dark Wolf is kind of playing 20 questions because she got trapped in a void somewhere, and people want to know where she is to rescue her, and she's giving hints and answers to that. So we break down mechanically what is a dwarf. All dwarves get +2 con. So this is indicating they're healthier, they're hardier, they don't get sick as often, and a little of that's going to be reflected in their other abilities. They have a natural end life of 350 years. What could cause a longevity like that? Well, again, we're going to look at biology in order to address mechanics. We can use equal amounts of fluff or crunch, or if you want to call science and biology like real life crunch to explain fantasy crunch, we can do that too. We will come back and address this. Dark vision. As it's described in the book, dark vision, you're accustomed to life underground. You have superior vision in dark and dim conditions. You can see in dim light and within 60 feet of you. How? How are you seeing in the dark? There are ways to do it, so I'm not saying that it's impossible. In fact, dark vision is an excellent thing for characters to have. So think about this. If you sit down, how do dwarves have the ability to see in the dark? Mechanically, this is 60 feet of you, and it's in shades of gray. In older editions, there used to be something called infravision, and that was kind of a red-black hue. You could even say, so how do animals see in dim and dark light? They have things like echolocation. They have, cats have reflective retinas that help take in, and process more light in dim circumstances. There could be 50 or even more shades. There's probably as many shades as in the Kappa face, Shadzar. You shoot magical lasers out of your eye and they ping back at you like sonar. So you're kind of getting where I'm going with this, Bobicus. What if we said that, yes, we have dark vision? That's a slotted mechanical effect. What if dwarves have this infravision? Their eyes are capable of seeing on the infrared scale. Now, mind you, when they're out in the open, that could be different. Would they be like drow? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe if their eyes in bright light, narrow down, that excludes that extra like ring of infrared sensitivity. But there's nothing saying that instead of just saying in shades of gray, they see in shades of red and black, and that they actually in dim and low light, as their pupils expand, that broadens their senses into seeing into an infrared spectrum, right? And Bobicus is asking about more clues from Dark Wolf. Hello, I think there's monsters here. Peru, you're there too. You guys are great. And so mechanically, have we changed dark vision? No, you're still seeing 60 feet out. Is there a difference between seeing things in grayscale and in red and black? Not necessarily. Does a DM just want consistency and to think, okay, everything in dark vision and black and white and everything is otherwise is normal? Maybe he or she wants to, and so they wouldn't accept this. But you can say that your dwarf sees in this infravision as dark vision. You've flavored it. You've gone into the biology, right? As their pupils open up, it exposes more of their eye or certain parts of their eye to this whole other scale. And then as their eyes narrow in light, then that part of the eye is shut out. And if you do that, you can even go on to say, so dwarves in bright light might have very small pupils. They'll see perfectly. They'll see in the normal color spectrum, but maybe not necessarily like tieflings who don't even have sclera or irises or pupils, because tiefling eyes are all just like they're monochromatic. In fact, in my games, I always joke the only way to know if a tiefling's looking at you is to try and find the little blood vessels and see if they're pointing one way or the other. So maybe in bright light, dwarves almost seem to have irises because their pupils are just so small. Otherwise, they're like these little black pinpricks in the middle of a big disc of green or brown or something else like that, or gray. And there we go. Have we mechanically changed dwarves in a significant fashion? No, but we've certainly made them really biologically distinct in their own way. We're creating an ecosystem of these people who we can get into arguments of evolution and creation and, evolutionary biology, and especially in a context where, in a fantasy game where gods are super real and they grant you magic powers directly. I'm not going to try and cause a philosophical controversy, but this is a way that either the gods made them or they grew up themselves, and they did so in these circumstances. So they have eyes, the eyes work, but they work differently. This is how we can explain that dwarves' eyes work differently. You think you've been there recently? Mr. Grimm is trying. Peru is giving hints. Bobicus notices your typo, Peru. Or unless you're talking to Mr. Grimm with a Y-O-U-R instead of apostrophe R-E. So we've answered the how. How does your dwarf have dark vision? Then we have Dwarven Resilience. That reads, you have advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have a resistance against poison damage. Why do dwarves have this ability? There's mechanical reasons from a game development perspective. Why do dwarves have poison resistance? Think about it. Have any of you thought beyond... and I'm not challenging you because I don't think that you have. Many, if not all of you, may have. But why are dwarves just racially proficient at poison saves? So Bobicus says dwarves traditionally eat a lot of cave fungus. That could very well be. It's a part of their diet, right? They got used to it. Because of Lord of the Rings, says Shadzar. I mean, look, Wizards of the Coast, or WOTC, WotC, people do claim stands over for warmed over Tolkien crap. Yep, Mr. Grimm, cave fungus or even mineral poisons. That is correct. When you're digging caves, like you grow up in caves underground, you have heavy metals. You have elements. You have radon poisoning. You have, you have radiation. You have contamination, arsenic. You have all of this stuff underground. In Peru, they drink so much their livers can easily overpower any toxin. Dwarves, halflings, and elves are all based on the same races designed by Tolkien. No, I understand. No, I know that they didn't create D&D. I wasn't implying that. I was implying that many people say that WotC stands over for warmed over Tolkien crap. In other words, that they've taken Tolkien stuff. I mean, and we can even say Warhammer and Games Workshop have been doing it for even longer, but Magic the Gathering, stuff like that. Come on, work with me, Shad. Work with me. Anyway, so we have reasons why dwarves would be subjected to enough poison, and various poisons at that, because this isn't specifying a type. This is, you're bitten by a snake, you have resistance. Someone slips you poison in your soup, you're resistant. You eat the wrong rock, you're resistant. Babakis says the dude who invented radiocarbon dating was a young Earth creationist. When asked how he reconciled the two, he said that God created the world with a false but consistent history. Hey, I'm up for learning random facts. Were dwarves created as though they evolved? This is your world. They can be. They could be, as they believe Moradin made us on his anvil. This is our belief, or it actually could have happened, right? Just very literally, Moradin came down and there's a dwarf. There's a dwarf. There's a dwarf. Or they could have started as some... they could have started as some generic race and gone from there. And it's actually on that point, Babacus, you're a phantom 2 steps ahead of where I'm going. So hang on to that idea. So Dwarven Resilience, why do they have it? And so how do they process this, right? Especially because we think of dwarves as heavy drinkers. Well, naturally, they'd have to be. It's twice as hard for you to get a buzz, naturally, without even having to have cirrhosis or some sort of unhealthy tolerance, because you're resistant to alcohol, which is a poisoning. That said, as a DM, should you consider medicines to be not as effective? That's up to you. Like herbal medicines, not necessarily magical ones, because they're sometimes the line between medicine and poison is very thin. So how far into that rabbit hole do you want to go as a DM? That's up to you, but consider that kind of stuff. Sheds are, an acronym. I'm sneezing. Okay, too cold to brain. Mr. Grimm. Oh no. Well, Mr. Grimm, if you ever, I don't know if you'll get there tonight. Maybe you will. You've had some good rolls. If you go to the Underdark and beat it, I'll give you a bonus for confronting this devil. Clark is going into a random dungeon. There's a pitfall. Can he dodge? 2d20, takes disadvantage 4, and unfortunately, it's Clark, falls into a pit. Hello? Not quite there yet, Mr. Grimm. You need 140 more EXP. So, for Dwarven Resilience, do we say, we look at this biologically, do they just have a really big liver? Or You can do it. You can do it through some other fashion. If your players, if you want to present to your players ahead of time to kind of show that you're a smarty, or I don't know, maybe you've taken some first aid or undergrad medical classes, or you're a doctor or a paramedic of some kind. Come up with a medical reason. How is it that they're able to process this poison so efficiently? Is it something in their blood? Is it an organ that already exists, like a liver? What I did is I gave my dwarves in my campaign world something called a Leadbelly. Think of it like an appendix. It's kind of like a it's like a bladder slash liver, where as their body scrubs and filters their blood through their liver, toxins and metal, like heavy metals and stuff, are held inside of this bladder. And every so often, the dwarf expunges this waste. And could that waste even be valuable? Could they make like little carbuncle jewelries out of it? Possibly. That's something you could explore too. But that's how I rationalize that my dwarves are able to process the poison. They filter their bodies, and once they're lead belly, because right, lead's a heavy metal, it's a toxic metal. Once it scrubs enough out. Oh, Big Mike, thank you so much for following. I appreciate that. Hopefully you're having fun and following along. And feel free, if any of you have any homebrew ideas or things that you're doing differently, I just want to stir your imagination with this segment and engage in the conversation, because there's some fun stuff happening here. Shedzer says, I have an idea about the whole thing with the commands. If you want, you can throw it in Discord real quick, because it's a big idea that will make things less spammy. Yeah, if you want to throw it in the Discord, I'll take a look at it, Shad. I appreciate it. I'm open to ideas. I know things. We've been growing. We've been getting more people coming in. I super appreciate that, and I would like to integrate things to be. I would like to integrate things to be a little bit more efficient, to be able to accommodate you all and to still allow for fun. By the way, Shad, you'll be happy to know that I found that video record button. So if any of you want to see rewinds of these programs, you should be able to do it through Twitch, let alone through YouTube at a later time. And Dark Wolf is still trapped somewhere. Oh, poor Grim. Weep wop. Yeah, Ruin's sticking with you. So here we go. Big livers, something in the blood, a lead belly, or some equivalent. So now your players are like, whoa, I never thought of things like that. I always knew they were poison resistant, but I didn't think beyond the crunch or just the line that you fill in, or that it's just a mechanical benefit. So now your world is a little bit more fleshed out. These things are happening for reasons, and if you as the storyteller can explain those reasons, you're a little bit more accomplished as a storyteller. Dwarven combat training. This one seems pretty obvious, right? You have proficiency with the battle axe, hand axe, throwing hammer, and warhammer. As a DM, if you think that your dwarves would be proficient with something else, you could replace that. If you can find weapons that are similarly statted, make it a part of the culture. This is more of a cultural note. These are what dwarves grow up using as tools, let alone as weapons. And so dwarves are going to be just inherently more handy with them to expand the list. So you could think of it in a cultural sense. If you have, I don't know, you want to make forest dwarves, maybe they're really good with, the axes, right? Battle axes and hand axes. But instead of a throwing hammer or warhammer, or you could still keep it if you think that they're carpenters. I don't know, they go to, oh, geez, maybe a forest wasn't necessarily a good choice here. Well, oh, heck, I'm having difficulty. Oh, let's use a seaside. So they live by the seaside. Maybe they use tridents and nets also, because that's what they're used for fishing in their coastal caves, right? In fact, let's look at if we look here on the map that we created, there's caves that go out into the sea. There's nothing saying that dwarves can't live in or on these little mountain islands. Well, obviously they're going to need to be able to harvest kelp or catch fish or, I don't know, grow some kind of vegetation. So maybe things like spears, tridents, and nets could replace some of these cultural weapons that they're growing up with. And as long as you as the DM, you're not like, you don't say, oh well, it's not like everyone is learning how to use great swords and everything. Then, if you're happy, you've fleshed out your world that much more, and you've really opened up things to your players. Jam Jam, you gain a level or you can draw 2 additional. Well, let me give you some EXP so you can do that, Jam Jam. There we go. Dark Wolf says it's a little chilly, but it might just be me. Well, just remember, chilly today, hot tamale. Sorry, I'm checking something real quick here. Okay. Tool proficiency. You gain proficiency with the artisan's tools of your choice. Smiths, brewers, or masons. Again, this comes down to the culture of the dwarf. If you're starting them in a region, an area, or within a certain culture, you can adjust it. Artisan's tools, for this kind of stuff, artisan's tools are artisan's tools. What is offered here is based on the culture that you have been given as a primer in the PHB, which there's nothing wrong with it, and it's good for a default, or default, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So, can you swap that out? Sure, there's not really a problem with that. Stone Cunning. Whenever you make an intelligence history check related to the origin of stonework, you are considered proficient in the history skill and add double your proficiency bonus to the check instead of your normal proficiency bonus. Well, right, they work with stone. They're traditionally masons. They live under the ground or on the ground and really close to it. They're shorter, so they're even closer to the ground as compared to even some other medium creatures. Though, gnomes and halflings beat them out there. We're still trying to figure out the mystery of where Dark Wolf is. Stone Cunning seems pretty obvious. Again, this is kind of a cultural thing. If this is what this race knows, and it's known for generations, and your generations are living almost 400 years, there's going to be an ingrained skill set of some kind that, even the delinquent dwarf who doesn't pay attention in school is going to pick up because it's so inherent in that culture. Can you replace Stone Cunning with something else? Sure. Make it thematic to what you're doing. It's the same thing but different. Go from there. Now we come down to, there's 2 variants. Hill dwarves get +1 wisdom and dwarven toughness, which is effectively like getting a +2 con. You don't get the proficient, or you don't get the bonus on your saves, but it gives you an extra hit point every level. So they're a little tougher, and they are a little wiser. Hill dwarves, as it would explain here, are you under the mountains all that much? Maybe not. Maybe you're living in and on the hills. You're in the Vanguard city outside of the mountain, so you need to use your perception more, your insight more, because you're trading with people a little bit more. Maybe your mountain dwarf cousins are bringing the gold out and you're marketing the gold to the outside world. Think of wisdom-based skills. And so this culture, and even, like subspecies of hill dwarf have come to adjust to this lifestyle. And for mountain dwarves, they live underground. They're the diggers. They're the laborers. They're the smiths. Oh, big, strong muscles, right? Pound, pound, pound. We're digging, we're sculpting, we're laboring over forges and over gorges and other things that don't have to rhyme, but... Yeah. Corgis is kind of spelled like it, but it doesn't rhyme. Well, you get what I'm saying anyway. Forges and gorges, and maybe some corgis, or corges we can call them. They're the ones digging up the glowing piece of the aggro crag. And so it makes sense, right? Their sub-race is strong inherently because they're the hard laborers. And they get dwarven armor training, maybe because they need to wear the protective clothing in the mines. They're used to carrying higher capacities, things along these lines. So if you wanted to do some, fun stuff with your with your dwarves and switch this around for cultural reasons, like deeply ingrained cultural reasons, go for it. Use some imagination, have fun. And if any of you have tinkered with your dwarves, I'd love to hear it too. Well, Peru, you're just a human or humanoid furnace, I should say. Let me see something real quick here, because Shad was sending me a couple messages. Okay, Shad, I get what you're saying. Something like that might be possible. Bobicus has been working on. Bobicus has been like toying around with some other commands and setups, and so something like that might be able to be used. And I agree that that would make it a lot more interactive. Oh, and he shot another laser eye wink at me too. Ugh. Yep, yeah, and I know the command about rolling to see which roller or which user's rolling the dice. I got it. I appreciate that, and um, maybe we can have a little powwow about that kind of stuff and see what we can do on the back end to make the front end experience really good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, if you want, Shad, if you want to talk to Bobicus about that, it's not necessarily tech. It's more of a conceptual implementation, Bobicus. Dark Wolf is really is kind of stringing this along. Can you all figure out the mystery of Dark Wolf's whereabouts? This is like a little mystery campaign we're running in chat right now too, isn't it? Oh gosh. This is why I love broadcasting with you all. You're awesome, you're interactive, you're inquisitive, you have great ideas. Some of you have a little experience, some of you have a lot, and all of you seem willing to share or at least just, sit back and take it in. It's great. Clark, if you're curious, Dark Wolf and Peru used the deck of many things, and they both got sucked into the void. And so now she's trying to describe her location to someone so that they can come and rescue them. So it's a bit of role playing. Oh yeah, you were talking about having an XML to PNG creator last night too. Okay, so let's talk Dragonborn. Dragonborn had come up. They're down here. Dragonborn had come up in chat. I don't know if it was in the Twitch chat. I think for sure in the Discord. And particularly Dark Wolf was wondering, why don't Dragonborn have tails? And it went into kind of a back and forth of, well, Dragonborn Dragonborn are described as not having tails. And why is that? Why did Wizards decide to, or particularly the D&D branch, say, well, let's have Dragonborns without tails? Pardon. Is there a mechanical detriment to them having one? Maybe not. You as a DM could very well say, yeah, that's fine. Dragonborn can have them. And so it comes down to things like, do you want them confused with half dragons? Do you want them confused with other similar entities? Or there's also the fact that if we look here, the natural end life of a dragonborn, which is subject to change, and I'm gonna come back to ages on these races here in a little bit. The natural end life is 80. A dragon, through lore and again, it's your world. That's the standard disclaimer. Anything could be anything you want. But dragons can live hundreds, thousands of years. Why are Dragonborn, these ancestors of dragons, living only 80? Why do they not have wings? Why do they not have tails? It would seem that the human, in this interbreeding with humans, this constant human influx has watered down the draconic traits. And there's a few core elements left, but this is implying that there's a very human impact on the draconic genetics, on the lineage and the bloodline. So what is the draconic ancestry? At this point, as a Dragonborn, it's almost implied that you're a human born from a dragon. You know, in other ways, we almost have like half elves, right? Well, you're just considered to be a human who has elven characteristics. You're as a Dragonborn, you're not a half dragon, but you're the watered down step. If this were Vampire the Masquerade, I don't know, you could be like a, like a 13th generation vampire or something. If any of you get that, by the way, then more power to you, because that's it's not a forgotten series, but it's a little bit older of a one. By the way, I want to put on, there we go. We're going to go into a lost mine for this conversation. We're talking about dwarves and other things. I'm going to turn my volume down for it. I'll get you in 1 second, Bobicus. Let's see. Grimm's going into the forest. Is it a deer? He rolls 2 and 14, but he gets advantage, so he beats it, and Mr. Grimm is going to get 150 experience points. There we go. Shadzar says Dragonborn don't have tails for the same reason Thri-kreen aren't core playable races. D&D is a humanocentric game. All things must look and function like humans. It is human. I wouldn't even say ethnocentric. Yeah, I think like humanocentric. It is very anthropomorphized in that sense. Bobika says, are Dragonborn born from dragon human interbreeding? I thought they were their own thing, fully draconic, just humanoid. An appendage that would give advantage to things at level 1 means that all other races are trap options because they will by default be weaker mechanically. Mr. Grimm, did you hear that ogre fall? Having a tail doesn't mean a prehensile tail, so it's not a balance problem. I get what each of you are saying, and yes, it is easier to play a character that has something that you're familiar with having, right? Thri-kreen have 4 arms. As a player, maybe if you're an older or an experienced player, it might be a little easier for you to conceptualize having 4 arms, what you can do with them, and how they can otherwise affect the mechanics of the game or the story. So yes, from a writing D&D books and crunch standpoint, it's just easier to say, just like in Star Trek, all aliens have 2 arms, 2 legs, and we just put face makeup on them. It's a little easier for us humans to understand something else that looks kind of human, but different enough to be, oh, well, hey, we have a cat this evening. But different enough to say, ooh, that's spicy and foreign, and I think I can get into that. It doesn't have to be prehensile. Grabbing means nothing. It's an extra appendage to attack with because dragons, the monster, get a tail attack, so why shouldn't Dragonborn if it has a tail? I mean, technically, tieflings don't get an attack with their tail, so... King says, you can give characters a tail without giving any mechanical significance. I agree. So the point, kind of going off of at least what Shadzar said first, these are watered-down dragons. They're made to be more anthropomorphized. They don't have the tail. They don't have the wings. They have less fingers and toes, but they still have them. And they only live to be 80 years instead of 8,000 years old, like a dragon would. So it's just meant to show that there's a lineage. And so Bobicus, are they born from interbreeding? Probably. I mean, half dragons exist for a reason, and it could have been to a point where you can't split it down any further. So after generations of this dragon human cycle, you actually have this own, the code can't be watered down anymore, and so you will just have Dragonborns, and there was enough of them that they can breed and pass on their own traits, and they're their own people at this point in time. Obviously, that would have taken a lot of time, and again, stick with me because we're getting to something on this regard. If we want to make an entire, racial ecosystem and a timeline of development, whether it's divine or whether it's, through evolution and science. Problem is, there's always someone that would argue that Tails can having the musculature to attack. I mean, they can, but as a DM, you just say, eh. And yeah, they already have a breath weapon. That's true. Yeah. So you guys are getting a good, at least a solid D&D 201 discussion going on here. If not dipping toes, maybe into some 301 stuff. If you're looking at Shad and Bobicus here. Oh, well, King. Yep, so this is Miss Sophie. She's the grand matron of the house, and she is a beautiful tuxedo cat. Oh, goodness. Show him your beautiful face. She is purring like no one's business. There we go. Oh, she's happy. Right? Oh, there's the ears. Peru, I don't know. Is it lagging? I'm not showing that I'm dropping any frames, Peru. Yeah. King, just say no. That's my balance. Oh. So this is showing that there's still, what is the core element of a dragon? Well, in this case, it is the elemental attunement, right? You still have this breath, and you still have the resistance that comes with it. So we've answered what is the draconic ancestry. So these are humans with some dragon in them, right? So we've reached this minimum state where they are still separate from humans, but they're still effectively a half-human, like a half-orc is and a half-elf is. It's just that they have these draconic features as a rider on top of them. So, you know, the damage resistance is a biological rider onto the breath weapon, and that goes back to which dragon ancestry is represented. But then we come down to the breath weapon. How do they generate that? If you are in, I don't know if you'd even allow Dragonborn to be in a low fantasy or no fantasy setting, or if you do, is there a gland? Is it an organ? If so, how is it different between dragons? How can one generate lightning? How can one generate poison? How can one generate fire? These are all things that you can think of as a DM and say, all right, so biologically, what can we do? Are they gases that are stored? And maybe so all dragons have a similar biology in a throat sac somewhere, and their body chemistry is different, right? So we're providing the different resistances and whatnot. But their body chemistry is such that they can create exothermic or endothermic reactions, electrical reactions, right? Let's talk about this kind of like scientists. What is producing? How can we create chlorine gas, right? How is this entity able to do that? And so you can ask, well, do all dragons have a universal breath organ? Or is it unique to their biologies? Because if we look at dragons, they come in different shapes and quite different colors. Though we have gold dragons and red dragons that both can breathe fire, and brass dragons too, if I recall correctly. Do they share the same organ despite not sharing the same direct color, metallic or chromatic otherwise? How do you want to do that? And then how can that get passed down in a way so that there's a miniaturized version inside of your character, right? So you can actually hork up these acidic loogies. Shadzar says, "For he also wasn't D&D, it was Warhammer Fantasy clone." Babika says, "You blasphemer." Or "You blaspheme." King says, "You read that story." Okay. You don't get the significance, you're lost again. Oh, but Mr. Grimm's following the mystery of K.H. Darkwolf. Peru might be throwing some shade on Darkwolf's mystery. And Clark seems to be in on the adventure too. So we have a party of at least two, Clark and Mr. Grimm, going after Perugia and Darkwolf. Shadzar says Wolg is in a zombie brain. She turned into a rot grub. I don't know if I follow that. King. Oh, he just got back from a meeting. Hey, you know what, King? If you're working and you come back to the stream too, or if you're doing that between the things you have to do, like in a real talk moment, I super appreciate that you're taking time out of what you're doing to at least keep an ear open and follow along. That means a lot to me, and hopefully I can continue to churn out amusement, fun ideas, or this kind of interaction. So thank you. I appreciate that. Shadzar says, how can a dragon survive without being burnt up by their own fire? Yeah, Wizard did it. See, that's something else too. Now, that would kind of go into, they have resistances, and I'll dig a little bit of that into tieflings as well, because we're going to go into fire resistance. Pardon me. Peru's rolling a die. Shadzar. Oh, Shadzar. Oh, no. King says, also, Dragonborn don't have to be partially human. One of the things Tiamat did to bolster her forces was to break her whole dragons and break them down into fractional creatures to outnumber Bahamut's forces. So maybe you're just some entity with lingering draconic essence of some kind. That's true. It could have been magical. It could be divine. By the way, this was the helmet that I was wearing in the first segment. I'm taking it away because someone woke up and was sniffing at the feathers. Tisk tisk. And it wasn't Sophie. I'd expect better of her anyway. Okay. Yeah, so this is a different way of approaching it as well. Are they really watered down humans? Are they fractional creatures magically, as King had suggested? And again, the PHB does give you, for whatever reason, it skips over ends of words. But anyway, it gives you some history, a base of culture, some origin stuff. But think about that, and think about, well, why won't their own fire burn them, or their own acid or lightning, kind of a thing. And it does bring up, by the way, if any of you have read the books, and I love that they did this in 5th edition. I think it's at the end here. Yeah. If you all don't know what Draconians are, I would definitely read the Dragonlance series, like the original 3, because that's an interesting take. Although Draconians and Dragonborns aren't completely interchangeable, in my humble opinion. I guess in a way they're kind of like Drow are to elves, or Duragar are to dwarves. However, Draconians do have wings and tails, and they also have an intrinsic magical surprise inside. We'll put it that way. You break the piñata and you win a prize with every Draconian. We'll see how long your beard is if any of you get this. Vampire were-rats don't need saving throws. That's true. The Legend of Shadzar, the vampire were-rat. Or get there was a movie? Daughters of Autumn Twilight. I'll have to look into that. I didn't know that there was. Is it an animated movie or something, Shadzar? Or was this like a fan project? I'd love to know more, honestly. Okay, so we've discussed ways to think about your Dragonborn, customize them. What's their biology? How are they functioning? Now let's come down to Tieflings. Tieflings, +1 int, +2 charisma. Oh, by the way, I forgot to put the second stat for Dragonborn up here, but don't worry about that. Here we have an infernal bloodline. Again, I would argue that these are half humans. In fact, that's as in the character creation, that's how it's set up, right? Do they like their infernal side more? Do they like their human side more? Now, at this point in time, they are a race themselves, like the Dragonborn. You know, a Dragonborn gets with a Dragonborn, and you make a Dragonborn baby. Because how is Babby formed? Tieflings get with Tieflings and they make Tieflings. Because at some point in time, there was a genetic shift and they became, not an evolutionary dead end, but they got to this point where they're happy and they are, I'd say productive, but they're also reproductive. Yeah, variant human for life. Really? Like, is this a real thing, or are you gonna give me a winky face of doom? Or, I guess, a Kappa, too, because that'd probably be a little bit more... I mean, if that's so, I'll look into it. I hadn't heard of something like that. So anyway, are tieflings in your world half humans, or a human variant also? They could very well be. Oh. Truly Babakis is a child of Zaris, the one true god of man. Oh. Huh, well, I'll be Dragonlance, Dragons of Autumn Twilight, a Dungeons and Dragons adventure tale. Oh, not daughters. Okay, I thought for some reason it must have just been a mistype. But yeah, wow. It is an animated adventure. I think I might have to pick this up then. I do have the Dungeons and Dragons complete animated series too, by the way. Hashtag just saying. Do I know the tales of Zaris and Pelor, or at least the theory? Not offhand. Zaris isn't ringing a bell. Pelor is, but I mean, when you cut your teeth on 3rd edition, Pelor was like the default god of clerics and goodness and holiness and whatnot. In my DM's world, tieflings were created through a nation being cursed by a demon. Yeah, that seems to be a very solid start to that. The PHB gives like hints at something else like that happening. It was like a dark bargain on behalf of an entire people, and those people just went out into the world and populated. Babaka says, long ago, according to legend, Zaris was the first man created by the world itself. No deity had a hand in his creation, because no deity could have conceived such a perfect creature. Members of the other races trembled to see him, for they knew that he was their superior in every way. His grace surpassed that of the elves, his sturdiness astounded the dwarves, his crafts were the awe of gnomes and halflings everywhere. And Mr. Grimm, oh, poor Grimm, is still on the lookout for Dark Wolf. Hey, Peru. Well, I guess you're earning interest while you're in stasis. Oh, you brought the Yoda hat. You want me to throw that? Well, that's way too far away. Natural end life around 70, right? So you have demons that can potentially live forever. Well, now they're in a mere mortal shell, and that of a human, or a humanoid, and so they're living about the same age as a human being would naturally. Dark vision. How do they have dark vision? Especially if they don't even have pupils. What's going on? Well, what if you ruled it that when there's no light to compete, the eye... right, if we had our dwarves, right, their pupils open up really wide in the dark and expose like a whole other like layer or a mini organ or something in their eye, a second retina that was like an infravision. They could see on the infrared scale. How do tieflings see in the dark? I don't know. They're made of fire. What if we go for some kind of a thermal imaging? They can see heat. Is that kind of the same as infrared? I mean, for dwarves, we were saying that it's red and black. Again, anything could be anything. But dark vision is a mechanical stat line. How biologically do they see in the dark? Are they extending? Is it something like through the vibrations in their tail? And if so, can you remove a tiefling's dark sense if you remove their tail? Are they able to, when there's no light hitting their eyes kind of adjust and they're seeing things as a thermal imaging device would? That would be more than two colors, right? It's not black and white or it's not black and red. But as a DM, does that seem colorful and flavorful enough to you that you could then present the world in this kind of predator vision, right? Think of the Predator from the movies, and fwink, fwink, and it could get through the different ways of seeing things. So maybe the objects or whatever are based on heat or something along those lines. And now you've just added a little bit of like biological organic flair to your tieflings, and you still haven't broken the point, the purpose, the rules as intended, and arguably not the rules as written. Well, I guess rules as written because it says black and white, but rules as intended were still within that boundary, and your tieflings are a little bit more flavorful for it. So maybe that's what they end up doing. Peru sits on his small pile of gold. Well, is the gold cold against your backside? Because again, you sort of like teleported out there without anything. Except you're what you were born with. Let's see. Bobicus is saying that's one hell of a mythical figure. Are we... Well, so Bobicus is... I think Bobicus answered the King's Tale of Zarus and Pelor, or... I'm not sure what you're saying, oh, well, that's a mythical figure to Bobicus. Unless I'm missing something. Was there something in Discord that I didn't look at? It's probably not vibrations or sound. Yeah, that would be blind sight or tremor sense or whatever. It could be something with the horns, even. Maybe the horns somehow act as an echolocation, right? Like they vibrate in an ultrasonic... some kind of an ultrasonic vibration is emitted that is, I don't know, shows up on a visible scale. I mean, we have a demonic influence. We can have some fun with it a little bit. You know, use what they have. They have horns and a tail. That's more than what Dragonborn have. So can we use it biologically to aid their senses in the dark? And those could be ways to go about doing so. King says, in 3.5, there is a recurring Cleric of Pelor that's used as an example. Redgar's the... Yeah, I know Redgar's the fighter, and you get some of the other ones. I know the Cleric you're talking about. Except in the artwork and examples, he's doing good guy Pelor things. Except in the artwork and examples, he's not doing good guy Pelor things. He's casting evil spells that you can't cast without being an evil cleric. And in one of the art pieces, he's angrily tearing down a statue of some other deity. People use this as one of the reasons that they believe Pelor to actually be an evil god instead of a neutral one. If you want to read the whole thing, it's posted here. Yeah, I'll open that up and I'll take a look at that. I like that, you know. But hey, that's just a theory. Whoever gets us out is drinking on me. Dark Wolf will get you some drinks as well. Hey, there you go, King. If you can figure out from all the clues. By the way, Dark Wolf, you might want to recap what the clues are, if anyone new wants to try and rescue you. King, if you can rescue, it sounds like Peru's going to take you to that image of the pub that we use for the rest, and you might be able to finally get that lady in red you've been looking at. Babika says, all dark vision comes from eye lasers. Prove me wrong. He has set up a table in the local park and even took a piece of poster board and has it hanging right there. You know, change my mind. Oh, King, that's probably feedback to Bobicus's thing. I would agree. I think that was done. I think that was done well, and I understand why there would be controversy in and out of character about it. All right, so we're talking about these ways to spice up your races without really changing the mechanics of what was intended in the PHB, or the PHB. And of course, they get hellish resistance. They're resistant to fire damage. That makes sense. What are they going to do with it? Aha. We have tieflings who are intelligent and charismatic. They're able to resist fire. They don't take as much damage from it. We can conceptualize this in a couple different ways. Maybe they have higher tolerances. Something along those lines. What I've enjoyed doing in my campaign setting is, and I think I talked about this once before, if you want something sturdy built, you know, you want something like solid armor, you want whatever, rivets, you want architectural stuff, the dwarves are the people to go to. If you want something elegant made out of metal, you want filigree, you want fancy blades, you want gems set into, you know, hot things, think of it. A tiefling would work very well in a smith shop. In fact, as I have flavored them in the world, many of them will actually use hot metal and sculpt it because they're resistant to the damage from the heat. And so they're able to take these little gobs of metal and mold them and shape them and give them levels of detail that the dwarves are not capable of reproducing, let alone humans or anyone else. And you could argue even especially Dragonborn, because Dragonborn have well, I think they said that they have 4 fingers, so they're not Ninja Turtles with 3, but they have 3. I was kind of doing the same thing, but they have 4 fingers there you go. No pinkies, and so they have 4 fingers and like 3 toes or something. So a red Dragonborn is resistant to fire, and maybe they can make some good stuff too, right? They have strength, they can pound stuff out. But tieflings can mold and shape molten metals and jewels and gold in ways that these other races intrinsically can't, because they're using this fire resistance to their benefit. Yeah, Bob, because that after you explained it, that's how I was seeing it. You gotta have that UV light plugged in. King, these are clues. These are clues about Darkwolf and Peru's whereabouts. They both pulled the Void from the Deck of Many Things, and they were both teleported to a location somewhere. And they're handing out clues as to where they are, so someone can come and rescue them. You may want to offer some slightly more specific things, Darkwolf, or make sure that you are recapping all the clues that have been brought up so far, so that people who just are interested are getting, you know, the sentence or two of what is and isn't. As well, by the way, tieflings I made into an infectious race, you could say. A tiefling mating with a tiefling will produce a tiefling. And a tiefling mating with any other race will produce a tiefling. So you have a tiefling male and a dwarf female, you'll get a tiefling baby. A dragonborn male and a female tiefling, you'll get a tiefling. This is showing that their form is more perfected, or it's more at this end state. It's more at this refined state. You have this almost mix, because conceptually, without getting into my origin of them, which I can talk about later, they have this humanoid feature, and they have animalistic characteristics, they have human characteristics, they're a blend of both. Whenever a tiefling is born, all it takes is one of the parents, and tieflings are created, and therefore there's a stigma attached to them, not just in how they were created, but if a tiefling's in town, you might end up with a tiefling baby somewhere among the population, right? Especially, wink wink, nudge nudge, 2 charisma and that +1 intelligence. And so here we're playing the genetics, but in this case the tiefling genetics are superior in some way, and this causes a cultural concern, right? This is well, I don't want you near my daughter because I don't want tiefling grandchildren or whatever. And it could cause a little bit of you know, strife that way. That's because of the 1-drop rule when it comes to tiefling. That's kind of how I ruled it, right? If you carry the tiefling blood, in fact, if you've been infected with tiefling blood and you're a human, and you have a human wife and you produce a child, it will be a tiefling child. Yeah, Bobicus, fantasy for sure. Unfortunately, real life in some other areas. Murder all tieflings, literally tainted creatures. The absolute degeneracy, King. So now we get to humans. And all of this is building somewhere. This is all building into a story itself to create an ecosystem. You're in the Underdark. Yesterday, she became Queen of the Underdark before I was killed on my own blade. Yep. So there we go. Grim, you solved the mystery. So I will do something. The mystery was solved. Several of you were in on it. You all were participating. So that was a lot of fun, and I'm really glad that you all did that. So I will give you all 100 points for participating in the conversation, for going along with the riddle and the mystery. I appreciate that, Grim and Darkwolf and Peru and all of you. So humans. Squishy, average, Ryu, Mario, humans. What do they get besides, you know, the ability bumps or a feat? because they are the generic blob of the races. And that's just it. That is their superpower. Humans are ubiquitous. Humans are a genetic blob. Humans are a template. Humans have a great impact on the societies all around a fantasy world. Well, around a fantasy world that many that include them. I got to be careful about talking with absolutes, because obviously fantasy worlds differ from person to person. This makes humans perfect breeding stock, right? You get half elves, you get half orcs, you get half dwarves, you get tieflings, you get dragonborns. Humans can have babies with a lot of different people. I'm trying to keep this PG-13. Especially on the heels of us having a very charismatic high elf who goes from port to port. Oh, Jam, you just kind of had to go and get yourself in trouble. Oh, boy. So Clark says Zoe will kill King. Clark put a backstory for his character, his cleric named Zoe, in the Discord, so that's what he's talking about. And so King begins his mighty quest in the plains. A scarecrow jumps out, and King Von Ale defeats the scarecrow for 50 EXP. Pardon. Give me a minute to grind. Jam is now pulled into the void after Peru and Darkwolf were saved from it. So, humans. They're malleable. They're adaptable. They can fit into cultures, and their genetics are found in... to be compatible with, you could argue, all other races. I mean, you could say Goliaths are half giants if you really want to. Half dragons are pretty much just that. And so here, we've built this ecosystem, and we say, all right, so humans are this very malleable force. And whether you say that this is evolution or creation, as we have active gods and we have forces of nature alike. Oh, Grim went to the dungeon? Oh, sorry if I missed that. 2d20, 15, and 7. Oh, I'm sorry, because it looked like Jam went to the dungeon, and I got a little sidetracked there. So, yep, you get Tree Fitty. There we go. King goes into the dungeon. 4 to 13 with disadvantage, and King goes down. Oh. So yeah, it's Clark. Humans are D&D's biological Play-Doh. And so we also see that going back, we have ancient forces. So yeah, we have gods, right? I don't want gods given. We have gods, we have dragons, and we have broadly, or I guess we could say humans. These are the three forces. This is the holy trinity of a D&D world. Oh, Mr. Grimm's going into the forest. Advantage 12 plus 2 is greater than 12. There you go. And so we have this holy trinity of a D&D world. And this is a concept I use in my personal campaign world. That there are gods, dragons, and men as the forces at play in the world, and each has different roles. Each serves someone else. In this concept, humans serve dragons, dragons serve gods, and gods serve humans. And on the reverse, we have a concept of power flow. Gods are more powerful than dragons. Dragons are more powerful than humans. And yet humans are more powerful than gods, because gods have this intrinsic system of belief. They exist because people believe that they exist. I'm not making commentary on the state of the real world. I probably don't have to explain this to you, but this is in a fantasy world discussion. Gods have power based on the power and numerical, like the quantity of people who believe in them. And so the cycle completes itself in both directions, in service and in power. And so there was a time in this world, because we have is very much, this is their superpower. They're everywhere. They're in bloodlines around the world. They're ubiquitous. And so there was a time, because humans served dragons, that dragons bred humans specifically to fill niches. And so humans became dwarves. Humans became elves. These are cousin races. And therefore, humans could also interact, and also with dragons too. Humans were bred for small size as well, both to eat as cattle and to be able to perform certain tasks. If you're an ancient dragon and you're 50 feet long, are you going to be able to make intricate, something or another? Well, if you wanted to, you're going to need smaller hands. And fortunately, there's an abundant supply of food, labor, that's all around you. You take in this race. You're this intelligent, vast creator itself, let alone on the god tier. You mold them, you breed them, they're your cattle. You breed humans into these different racial, like these pure strains that can then still interact with the core human element itself. It's a beautiful cycle. It's an ecosystem. It's something that you can then reveal to your players, and they say, oh, this makes so much sense. And I'm not just trying to flout this. If any of you have other systems, please share them. But this is one example of what you can do to explain your world, to explain your biology, to show a system and a structure. Pardon. Yeah, a mull. A mull is a half-dwarf. Hey, Cerodium. Oh, you're late, but that's fine. We're talking a lot of story stuff. Unless you like Mr. Clean. Yeah, a bit king. Okay, one... Uh-oh, it's Clark casts harm. Oh no, King, you called out the tieflings and a tiefling strikes back. And Babaka's remarks, wow, rude. Please, no bully. Oh, here, this is 10 seconds behind. I'm going to put in a smiley face so you know what I'm talking about. There we go. I mean, look, King, I'm not saying that, but I'm not saying that, but I haven't not said that. But yes, they're everywhere, and there's a reason. In this campaign setting, dragons back in, like, even before Get Ye Flask times, they bred us proto-humans and us primitive humans as labor, as food, and even, you know what? There's probably some kinky dragons that polymorphed themselves and said, let's give it a try. And things happened. Yeah, I'm sorry, Grim. I got you here. There you go. And so we have this biology, we have this cycle, and that also shows, by the way, which is why tieflings is this kind of outside force, right? Whatever genetic code that is comprising tiefling is, overwrites this ancient primitive cycle that this world has depended on for centuries, from either godlike creation, draconic manipulation, or even humanoids' own breeding and interbreeding with each other. Tieflings come along, and all of a sudden, tieflings are overriding elves. Tieflings are overriding orcs. tieflings are overriding half-elves. Tieflings are overriding dragons and Dragonborn. And so now you have a race that isn't evil itself, but they're posing an existential threat to the world and how it was begun and how it was conceptualized to be in some way. So if, for reference reasons, look at Dragon Priest and Skyrim. Okay, I can try looking them up when I take a break, Jam. And so that's what makes this them like a truly like a new and foreign concept, a danger that some might even say, because an elf and a human might disagree on many things, and in fact, elves are humans and they were bred to live longer. They were bred for specific qualities, and so they developed along that cycle, right? This genetic cycle. And now a tiefling can just come in and there's a tiefling baby. There's a tiefling baby. Tiefling baby. Tiefling baby. Everywhere. Nice, Grim. You just barely got that in there. And so here you go. You've just developed an ancient history, something you can have your players uncover, something that you can use as the very foundation of your games, of the cultures. So let's go all the way back up to dwarves, right? Dwarves are humans, in a way. They're definitely humanoid. And this goes back to what Shadzar was saying with Dragonborn. Yeah, Dragonborn are just anthropomorphized dragons. And yes, there are marketing and out-of-character reasons. What can you do with those reasons in the lore to make it natural and work and show this cycle of gods and dragons and men? Oh my. Tieflings are like, but not necessarily. It's just that tiefling in the world that I'm presenting to you all, and the one that I use in my Sunday game, tieflings will override any other racial DNA, and they will. If a male tiefling gets with a female dwarf, they will have a tiefling child, and so on. And I will say one last note. We don't have to get into it, but now that we've introduced this concept, you have orcs, goblins. In many ways, like in Warhammer term, these are called greenskins. Think of it this way too. These could have also been bred human variants, right? They have a sentience, they have a culture. As far as we know, humans, well, especially in our own world, humans are the only people who can tell a story. Fight me. And so they've been super bred into these different lines, which could explain why we have a lot of anthropomorphic races in D&D worlds and books. Hey, Romonger! Oh, you're joining us at a kind of a good time. We're finishing up part 2. I'll be going into a break real soon, but I can go over everything in part 3 here real soon. We've solved a mystery. We've rewritten history. DuckTales! Woohoo! But then you have humanoids like, well, I guess they're goblinoids, so they're a little far removed. What gives them green skin? Well, for us red-blooded humans and otherwise, we have iron. That iron it attaches the oxygen, and that's what carries it through our system. We have red blood for iron, for the iron in it. Orcs and goblins? Well, what's a reason that they would have green blood? Let's think of a biological reason. What is a metal that oxidizes green? Copper. So maybe orcs and goblins, which by the way, orcs at least are compatible with humans. So orcs are still a cousin race. Goblins might be a second cousin. Maybe they're like too far bred in a different direction. Or I don't know, if you want to have a half goblin, I don't know, something like that. But they've been bred maybe by dragons in this case to work in a different area. Or it was an experiment. Can we make a different kind of human? Maybe iron isn't the strongest. Can we do something else? Copper might be more ubiquitous. And so they make a copper-blooded strain of humanoid. Takes on green appearances, and they were bred for strength. Well, we tend to find orcs living in mountainous areas, maybe hills or forests. Places where you might find a lot of minerals. You know, the copper isn't as strong as iron. And so, you know, maybe they do need to eat a lot. They can take the bulk. They can bulk up. They're strong, right? We look at a half orc, let alone a regular orc, but they need to consume a lot of minerals. They have to replace this oxidized copper in their system. Their diet has to be a little bit different to accommodate for that. And then just think, do you want to give blue blood to a race? What could oxidize blue? I'll leave that if you're a chemistry nerd. What would be a metal or something that could be consistent in a blood that would carry oxygen through a body and that would end up showing a bluish hue? You get what I'm saying? So we're mixing in biology, whether it's by creation or whether it's by evolution or something, or by either divine or draconic hand, but they have been bred for these roles, and over time they've just become more than a kind of a literal pet project. Okay, I have a little bit of catch up to do, and then I will take my break. So Ro came in, and Babika says, "Good evening." Peru says hello. Greenskin scum. Yeah, they're not mushrooms like in 40K, Ro. At least not in this world. Finally, okay, one last good roll, please, with Lady Luck. Mr. Grimm is going into the Underdark. Mr. Grimm needs a 17. And I'm trying to find your roll. Alright, so Jam battled. Alright, you're very resident sleeper. Okay, Clark, good night all. I'm sorry I missed your good night earlier when I was like kind of driving home a point there. Thank you again for coming out and being a part of what we have going on here. So Grimm had a random Underdark. I gotta find a roll. 2d20. Okay, there it is. 15 and 15. Hey! So he gets 2,000 experience points for that. There you go. That's an epic foray if you wanted to take it, Grimm. Jam battled and lost. Frogs give them greenskin. Yeah, maybe it's a dietary thing, right? You have flamingos who have actually white feathers, and they turn red from all the krill and the little shrimps that they eat. Maybe so. It could be dietary. Yeah, you didn't roll. Yeah. There are crabs that have blue blood. Yeah, that's true. Jam taps the rock with her staff, blasted it to bits, obviously injured. Damn Indiana Jones crud. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So you got a random dungeon, falling rock, and you get disadvantage. 8 plus 2 is 10, but you needed a 13. Oh. Boop boop ba-doo. Actually, crabs have blue blood because they replace the iron in their blood with copper. Yeah, so it'd be like a verdigris, which is kind of like a turquoise or like a bluish green. But yeah, Babicus. So that's kind of reinforcing what we're going here. Maybe you're making races, and it could just be skin pigmentation. That's fine as well. But if you want to make them foundationally different, they operate on a different blood system. So half-orcs are probably a miracle, right? They are just close enough cousins that they can still produce offspring together. Mr. Grimm kind of took a sweep through everything. Hey, you got a new med from Doctor Visit to put you to sleep. Hey, Bubonic. Well, if you're rested, I'm thank you for coming in and being a part of things. Hemocyanin instead of hemogoblin. Yeah, you know what? I hate those hemogoblins, those darn little vampire things. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Mr. Grimm's the hero of the night for rescuing everyone. Oh geez, Dark Wolf. Or oh geez, Mr. Grimm about Dark Wolf. Horseshoe crabs, they use their blood in medicine. Nah, it's not green at all, it's straight blue. First to a clothing shop, then drinks. Yeah, Peru just streaks to a clothing store. Anything. Well, maybe not that. Oh, I'll take that. Anything, please. Yeah, Grim, you're lucky that she's not lawful evil anymore. She was getting into it. You probably wouldn't have survived that comment. Hey, there you go, Dark Wolf. All right. Anyway, so I made a point about the races, the things you can do. You can have fun with them. You can go into this, and I'm gonna take a break, 5 to 10 minutes, continue chatting, having fun, and we'll be back and just kind of open it up. We can touch up the character we generated in part 1. If you still like talking about this stuff, or you want to see me write out the cycle or the mythology that that I presented, I can do that for you too. If you have your own homebrew stuff, hey, have at it. It's cool.